The other day on our Ask Me Anything Instagram Live, we had a beautiful question. What are some low-key recommendations for a watch that screams, if you know, you know? And I'm here today with Martin, and we've got a couple of choices. So Martin, bring us through.
So I think to kind of break that question down, there's kind of two parts to it, right? Like, what is something that is a little bit more low-key, and then what is a watch that says, if you know, you know to us? And I think each of us is going to have a bit of a different definition of those two things, right?
Yeah. How long have you been at Monards for now?
So I originally worked for Monards for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And then I left the industry for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And I've come back at the start of 2024. Yeah. So it's changed a little bit, but a few things have still kind of remained the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason why I asked that question is because for us, Monards is currently 33 years old. We've been in the industry for quite some time and seen so many different changes in terms of taste, clients, preferences. And what I want to point out is that the two parts to this question, number one being, what does it mean to be low-key? And number two, if you know, you know, they're going to be very subjective. And we're going to go through that today. So let's talk about the word low-key. What does low-key mean for you in respect to watches?
Yeah. Low-key, in kind of my interpretation of it, is something that is not instantly recognizable.
Sure.
It's something that you do have to look a little bit closer to kind of know what it is, or to even have a guess at what it might be.
Yeah, that's a great feeling too, right? Like if you like watches and you're on the tram somewhere, everyone's got the hands on the rail. Yeah. You spot the silhouette of a watch and you're always questioning yourself like, what is that watch? And that's kind of like the first rabbit hole. After that, who knows where the journey kind of takes you to, right?
Yeah.
And I guess low key for me essentially means something similar to you. You have no clue. There's a bit of a question mark. So for example, right now, if you're in a room full of people or if you're in the office, low key for me means if you walk into your office and no one will have any idea what's on your wrist.
Yeah. Like the outward appearance could make it look like a certain thing, but there's also a certain something, whether it's its movement or its design or something, or its story even, something about it that kind of makes it that piece that you want to delve in and look a little bit closer, and it won't scream to you anything at first glance, but as you delve deeper into it, that's when it reveals its kind of true character.
Yeah, the word low-key, I mean, like, truthfully, it can mean so many different things to so many different people. Yeah. And we're just giving you our interpretation on it.
Yeah, exactly.
If somebody, comes into the store and goes, hey, man, I think that's low-key, that's low-key. It's totally up to you.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the second part of this question. If you know, you know. What's the deal with this question?
Yeah. So it's kind of like an insider's kind of thing, right? It's kind of like I'm trying to think of a kind of parallel in another kind of hobby or industry or something like that, right? So it might be, for example, like in cars, you've got, for example, there is people that really love, for example, Porsches.
Yes.
And then there is a subset of people that really like a Japanese K car.
Okay, all right.
So it's like...
So we're going to put this on the B-roll. I have no idea what a K car is. So please explain.
It's like you can like cars, and you can like a certain, you can like a high-powered, super sports car, right? And then you can enjoy like a small, Japanese car that, fits into almost half of a regular parking spot.
Okay.
So it's kind of like one of those things where if you are very, very knowledgeable about that particular that particular area or that subject, then that's a point that people can really kind of gather and talk and learn about a lot more.
So I'm completely lost on your explanation. Please leave a comment below if you also agree that you are lost. Thanks, man. You've just confused. Everyone's just like, everyone's confused and they're flicked off. If you know, you know. We see this a lot on the internet. We see it a lot on Instagram. And there'll be someone posting up with the kind of acronym IYKYK.
Yeah.
And thanks to your explanation, it's inspired me to kind of give a different explanation or my version of an explanation. So, for example, if you're a chef in a restaurant and you have a fairly good understanding of what's ordered every day, and you have a menu item that you know doesn't get ordered very often, and every time somebody orders it and you look into the restaurant, that chef kind of gives you that silent respect. That's my definition of if you know, you know.
Yeah.
So it probably to dissect that even further, it's where an insider or somebody who actually is within that industry comes across something or someone who also feels the same way and kind of looks beyond all the options that are there, and he goes for something very specific that maybe 99% of the other intended clients would never pick.
Yep.
And you've got to have some sort of insider knowledge or maturity to picking that, and it's very intentional. It doesn't come or happen by chance, and most of the time when you look into other facets of this person's life, they are also very similar. I don't know if we've confused everybody, but it was a great question on the live, and it kind of inspired us to also show the choices that we've picked being in this industry for so long.
Yeah. There is a certain something to the if you know, you know what.
Yeah.
That you can't quite put your finger on.
And of course, like, it's okay for anybody's interpretation to be if you know, you know. I mean, we all live different lives, have different exposure. For us, we've been here for a while, so here is our interpretation of that question. Kick us off.
All right.
Tell the team, tell the viewers about the structure.
Yeah, sure. So we have separated our choices into 3 different categories, and we actually chose them. We actually categorized them in terms of the price of the watches, just because we feel that in every price category there is always something that is a little bit low key and a little bit, if you know, you know, has that little bit of special something behind it.
Yeah. So just to kind of give everyone a bit of structure, we picked 3 watches and we categorized them based on price. And the first tier we've got is under 10,000 Australian dollars. The second one is under 25,000 Australian dollars. And the third tier, which is right at the end of the video, please hang around because we've got some really interesting choices, is over 25,000. And again, like, these are reflective of our own kind of experience and history, and they may not be your cup of tea, but everything we have here is very personal to us.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go to the under $10,000 choice.
Yep.
And another reason why we did this video is because we feel like, in Australia especially, that most watch lovers feel like they're pressured to choose certain pieces. And we just wanted to show everyone, hey, there's so much choice out there. And that's kind of our mission here at Monards.
Yeah.
So let's kick us off. Under 10K, low key screams, if you know, you know.
Okay. So for the first pick, I've gone with the Longines Legend Diver. Now, for me, it's at a cracking price point. Cracking price points, that is.
Cracking.
And for reasons that I'm going to get into, the design of it is super vintage.
Yeah.
Which does kind of give it a bit of that low-key feel. It's a diver's watch, but it's not a typical diver's watch design.
Yeah.
And it's one of those watches you really need to read into first before you fall in love with it. And so for me, that kind of gives me the feeling of it being a little bit low-key, because number one, it's not the most popular or widely accepted choice for a diver's watch, and number two, you gotta really know and love history to choose that consciously, choose that watch consciously. Yeah.
And like straight off the bat, the actual bezel is inside the sapphire crystal, and that is a unique kind of proposition, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that the only one? That's probably the only one in the whole entire industry.
It's one of the only ones.
Yeah,
it's one of the only ones, and this has kind of kept its very vintage, kind of mid 20th century look and feel about it.
Yeah, no, I can see that. What makes this unique is the fact that it has two crowns.
Yes.
The top one to operate the bezel on the inside, and the bottom one for the date and the time. For me, this is super recognizable because of the lugs. The lugs are quite elegant, actually.
Yeah.
And Longines have kept pretty true to their vintage roots. And even on the case back, you've got a really interesting motif of a diver.
Yep.
It's low-key enough, right?
Yeah. It's one of those watches where, you will see kind of on someone's wrist, you'll see like two crowns popping out, and you're like, oh, what's, like, you look closer and you'll be like, oh, what is that? Like, why has that got two crowns? And then if you've kind of got a bit of that watch knowledge, you're like, oh, I see why it has two crowns.
Yeah.
I see why they've done that.
This would be interesting. The two crowns would kind of, it would trigger quite a lot of people to delve a bit deeper, to have a bit of a question mark.
Yeah.
And once they realize, because having two crowns is quite a rare sight in the industry.
I've got to try this on.
This one here is in the larger size. There's also a smaller size one.
Yeah.
The smaller size one has it's got like a gradient or something, right? The actual dial.
Yeah.
Martin, if you've been following us for a while, Martin is actually a very practical person. Practicality is his middle name. I always get him to choose watches. They're always the most practical, double function watches. They always have some sort of GMT or some sort of uniqueness to it. And the beautiful thing is his choice and my choice, we don't clash. So we'll never fight over the same watch.
I like it. I like this a lot. It's so historical. It's so, it's so, focused in this kind of design that if you really love history, if you really love watch history in particular as well, then this is one for the watch lovers.
At Monards, we have access to so many watch brands that have dive watches in them. And, dive watch has a bezel, it has luminosity to it.
Yep.
Sometimes it has a date, sometimes it doesn't. They're usually in steel, titanium, quite robust. And the Longines diver definitely sticks out amongst the crowd. It's a very intentional choice, actually.
It's like a bit more of an elegant kind of design for a diver's watch.
And also like a throwback to the old days as well. Yeah. No, that's a good choice. That's definitely a if you know pick.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got one that's quite interesting, and I guess like each explanation is personal to whoever picks it, right?
Yeah.
I've got on here a NOMOS Glashutte Tangente Neomatik. Now, the reason why I picked this watch is because this particular reference comes with the DUW 3001 movement.
Yeah.
And what you'll notice is in NOMOS you have manual winding movements, you have automatic movements. And the reason why I picked this is because, first of all, NOMOS designs itself are very recognizable. However, to the general watch community, they probably may not have chanced upon this golden nugget from Glashutte. So if you know NOMOS, then you'll know it's a NOMOS. But if you have no clue, never heard of NOMOS, you would not be able to identify it. So it's low key. We sell quite a fair bit of NOMOS, and a large core of that customer base is actually people who have some sort of work related to design. Architects, designers, have a lot of people in marketing as well. You've got a NOMOS, right?
I do.
How many NOMOS have you had before?
No, I've had one NOMOS in the past.
Only one?
Only one.
I think you've got a white dial one now, right?
I now have a white dial. I've actually now got my dad's one as well.
Oh, there you
So
go.
yeah. I've got my dad's one in my box at the moment.
So each NOMOS series is very unique to each other. And with the Tangente, you've got the thing that kind of jumps out at me is the font.
Yeah.
And I really like that elegant, elongated kind of design. And this one here with the DUW movement is their in-house produced and research and developed movement.
Yeah.
It's an ultra thin, ultra stable movement, and it's well decorated. And for me, that's an if you know moment, because this was also a very intentional purchase.
It's such a thin movement as well, and it keeps the watch super slim, super easy to wear on the wrist, and it makes it, something that's just easy to live with if you wanted an everyday dress watch.
I think the point that I'm coming from, though, is that you were around when they introduced that movement.
Yeah.
And actually, if you open up the watch, and you can see it's quite slim already, but producing a slim, ultra-thin, automatic movement and having it quite stable over time throughout wear and tear, actually it's quite difficult to do that. And not many brands or manufacturers in the industry can do it themselves. So that's why I find that quite an amazing story. And I'm glad that they put it in such a small case as well. It does highlight how awesome it is.
Like the watch lovers were going to look at this on your wrist and be like, oh, you have a Tangente, and then they look closer, and then it's, oh, you have the Neomatik version. Oh my god. That's the response I feel you get from this watch.
Most of the Tangentes, they're actually manual wind. That's why it's so unique for me anyway. So that's for me, that's like low key. If you know, you know. I'd probably swap up the strap to like a grey suede. So then you can just float into the office, really inconspicuous. All right, let's kick it off with the second segment, which is under 25K. The reason why I chose under 25K was because it allowed much more movement. I think if we went under 20K, you'd have less choice. Let's have a look. What did you pick?
I picked a Zenith Chronomaster original. So for me, this is again another kind of look closer at the details, look closer at the dial and the and the overall design of the watch, right? Coincidentally, I kind of went with another vintage design.
Okay.
So this is at the...
That's quite a coincidence.
This is the 38mm version. However, it's kind of... its kind of beauty lies in the actual movement itself. Where it is a 1/10 of a second chronograph.
Oh, wow. And is that a modern feature or is that like a vintage feature?
So that is a modern feature. So they've kind of blended the worlds of modern watchmaking and vintage design together in one package. And this is something that you would only really pick up on if you're a watch lover and if you really understand and have done a bit of your reading as well on watches.
So low key, I agree. It's kind of like you probably, so let me answer this question, right? Low key because it doesn't scream at you. And this honestly could be any watch halfway across the room.
There's a couple of watches with a similar kind of dial color, a little bit of similar dial layout as well. So it does blend in somewhat, but
This is a great choice actually. Like the actual colorway, this is like reverse panda.
Yeah.
Right? This is, or I don't know if it's Panda or reverse Panda. I always get confused.
Panda's the one with like where it's like black subdials, so it's like Panda's eyes, right?
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
And then reverse Panda is black as the main color, and then white as the subdial color.
So what I love about this is actually the case. I think the case, the case size is quite small, right?
Yeah, in for a chronograph as well. Yeah.
In comparison to some of the other Zenith creations. And the actual design itself, they've went like old school with the logo and the fonting. This is a really good detail.
The script on the El Primero kind of text on it as well.
And then the actual tachy as well. The tachymeter, they've gone the old format. Yeah, this is good. So why is it an if you know watch?
Zenith has always, for me, been that brand that has kind of been a cornerstone of the industry, and it's kind of part that it played in reviving kind of 20th century watchmaking is so kind of underrated and understated that for me, that whenever someone chooses a Zenith, it's always a question of why did you choose that, and the answer will inevitably kind of move its way towards the fact that they supported the kind of renaissance of watchmaking.
So I'm going to add a bit there. Just keep it real logical. For me, this is an if you know watch, because if somebody was looking at the Zenith collection today, this probably wouldn't be their first choice.
No.
They would probably pick up a modern Zenith, and although they think this would be nice, it probably wouldn't be their first choice. And that's what we see a lot of, actually. We've been Zenith partners for quite a long time now. We've seen multiple iterations of Zenith, the brand, and Zenith for me has always been about the movement, the El Primero. They have been a cornerstone of the industry because they are actually a movement producer first, and their whole mission, their whole priority is to create an accurate, fast movement, right?
Yeah.
And because of that, every single Zenith comes with the El Primero. And a client who seeks that feeling from a watch, that's definitely a Zenith client. Somebody who's not too concerned about the other facets of the watch, but enjoys the movement because it is one of the cornerstones of that industry. And so that's why if this was a room full of people and you have this particular watch on, that would scream out to me, this person knows.
Yeah. And it's like, even when you kind of handle the watch as well, like you don't know that it's at 1/10 of a second chronograph until you press that start pusher.
And it's also, how do I say this? There's so many details on this watch that you wouldn't notice unless you delved into that rabbit hole. And more than likely, you would fall in love with it. So this, for me, if I see that on somebody, if I meet somebody at a conference or even in the store and they have this watch, it would make me very curious about them. Yeah. Okay, so we're still on that category, under 25K. I've got one of my favorite watches here. And again, similar feeling to this Zenith, except this one here is not a chronograph. This one's actually a three-hander dress watch from Chopard, and this is an LUC. And I've done a bit of coverage of this. over the past few months.
But like deservedly so, this watch.
And the reason why I believe it's pretty low key, this is a sector dial with a small sub-seconds. There's no date. It is in green, right? It is in green, but that's not the reason why you buy this watch. Does that make sense? And so it's low key for me. It's got a slim profile, has the LUC hands as well, which is unique in the industry. The reason why it's a if you know watch, because this was the first time they kind of packaged their LUC movement into a stainless steel case that's a bit slimmer and smaller.
Yeah.
But this is actually what the industry was begging for.
Yeah.
And the actual font itself has been reduced, and it's a very pure watch.
Yeah. I think this is kind of every kind of watch lover's dream to have, you know, the movement kind of do the talking. The movement is something that, like, you know, sits close to your wrist. It sits closer to your wrist and no one really sees that, right?
Yeah, people only see what's on the outside, but the actual gem with this piece is on the inside.
Yes.
And only the wearer gets to enjoy that.
Yeah.
You've got a micro rotor movement.
Yep.
You have a lot of hand finishing.
Yeah.
And it's just a piece of art.
Yeah. And I think the one other thing that this watch does that not a lot of other watches do is it does give you that sense that you are also being responsible to the environment.
Yeah, with the lucent steel.
The lucent steel, that's it. So they're using, with the steel that they use in the case of this watch is 80% recycled steel.
Yeah. I think the last thing that I'll add to this watch, and we'll let the movement do all the talking, right? Like this watch, the client who buys this watch buys it purely for themselves.
Yep.
They're not here to be in a room to impress anybody. They are purely buying this watch because they can see that this is a stainless steel watch, which is great for every day. It's simple, it's pure, it's a sector dial, which you don't see many of. It's in green, which is not the main reason. Mm-hmm. And it uses Chopard's own in-house LUC movement.
That's so cool.
So it is a feat for the eyes to enjoy this movement. And this client is very confident enough to go beyond and to add this piece to their collection when probably most people wouldn't really understand what Chopard LUC is.
I think to kind of go one step further, or to summarize everything, right? It's low key on the outside, but you know, you buy it specifically to enjoy this movement.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I'm actually
that's a great pick.
Yeah,
this is a great pick.
I'm looking forward to see what else they do. Even just a variant dial will be good in a different color. I'm sure they will. But the actual movement itself is very promising, I would say. Okay, let's go on to the third segment, which is, we've done under 10, under 25.
Yep.
And that already, that's given us quite a lot of range. Now we're going to a pretty special segment.
Yep.
Over 25K.
Yep.
So Martin could have picked anything. Could have been sky's the limit.
Oh, it could have been. Yeah, could have been.
So let's have a look. I mean, you've picked a rose gold watch. So I don't know if that screams low key. But let's try and see how you justify this low key choice.
The low keyness in this rose gold Blancpain complete calendar is in the fact that, yes, it does resemble a very traditional kind of complete calendar watch.
Okay.
However, the way that Blancpain has gone about this is super clever. Okay. So the way that a lot of other brands, a lot of other companies approach a calendar watch is through having kind of little apertures on the side, little buttons on the side to adjust all of the functions. So number one, that kind of messes with the water resistance of the watch, and is also a little bit kind of user unfriendly in the sense that you've got to get a tool to actually press the pusher. If you're traveling, you can't really change that easily, right? So what Blancpain have actually done is used a system of what they call underlug correctors.
Okay.
And there is, you basically activate these with a thumbnail.
Okay.
And this way you can set it easily without having to use a tool.
So how's it low key?
It's low key. It's low key because it's for me a very white, plain white dial.
Yes.
and it just gives you all of the information you need and nothing you don't. So there's nothing superfluous, I feel, in its design.
I'm going to say something about just gold watches in general.
Yeah.
And, everyone's entitled to add a gold watch to their collection, whether it be yellow gold, rose gold. For me personally, I've got rose gold. I've got one on right now. For me, I feel like it's okay to do whatever you want to do. Somehow I feel like the more grey hairs you have, the better the rose gold watch looks. There's like this unspoken rule in the watch industry, and that is no gold watches until you're 40 years old.
I think the other thing for me as well, again, this is kind of a watch that's based around the movement.
Yes.
Right? And yes, you've got the underlug correctors for this, but also what they did is made this a secured movement.
Okay.
And so what that means is that you can set this at any time that you want, and you won't affect the actual functionality of the watch. There's no risk of damaging the movement because you're setting it at a
So why is it a if you know watch?
Because this is not someone's kind of typical choice if they're going for a
calendar.
Yeah, for something for a calendar, right? This is something that is a little bit of a throwback to watches of the early to mid 20th century. But again, it's not someone's first pick for a calendar watch.
You know, in my history at Monards, which spans almost quite a long time now,
yeah,
I've sold many references of this. And I mean, I can tell you off by heart the reference, right? 6654, 3642. This is a 55B. I've sold many of these. And the reason why people loved this watch is because of that patent, which is the under the lug corrector.
Yeah.
And if you put it aside for like a couple months and put it out of the rotation, and you come back and you want to set it, you can literally do that without a pin. And from a practical point of view, that's ingenious, right?
Yeah.
Like no other manufacturer has that.
You kind of like you kind of look at this watch and you kind of think, why don't other watches behave like this watch?
Probably because it's patented.
Yeah. But you're kind of like, why didn't they think of that? You know, why didn't anyone else think of that?
Well, it's quite simple. Like if I show somebody, their mind is blown.
Yeah.
Another beautiful aspect of this watch that not everyone understands is, and you touched on this, is that it's a secured movement. What most people don't realize is that when you start playing around with day moon phase, it's quite complicated, right?
Yep.
And you're probably going to bust something.
Yep.
If you move something at the wrong time and press it on the button, something's going to jam or something's going to be forced.
Yeah.
Blancpain knows this, and because it is so complicated, they added an extra layer of protection. So if the movement doesn't want to be manipulated that way, it secures itself. So that's also quite ingenious and a hidden detail that most people didn't know.
Yeah.
Now, do you want to know what my favorite part of this watch is? Have a guess.
I'm going to say...
Let's see if you know me. Let's see if you know me well.
I think your favorite part of this is the date hand.
The date hand?
The date hand. The serpentine date hand.
That's an interesting feature, right? That you don't see on most watches.
No.
Because most watches, the hands are quite straight.
Yeah.
That's a great feature. But it just goes to show you that you don't know me very well. It's the moon phase.
Oh, yes.
True?
Yes.
And that is a supreme detail that Blancpain has, Breguet used to have as well. Not anymore moving forward, but Blancpain has a very romantic moon phase.
Yeah.
That is the biggest Easter egg of them all.
Yeah. Legitimately has a face. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah. So if you wanted to be even more low key, you can go white gold with a champagne dial, or you can go the steel with a white dial. And this is a great choice for somebody who wants to add a dress watch with complication to their collection and remain really low key about it.
No, I kind of like the bombastic side eye of this one.
Yeah,
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, actually. And they've kept it.
Yeah.
They've kept it. Yeah. Blancpain itself, the way they manufacture their watches is very true to the original manufacturing process.
Yeah.
So it truly is, it doesn't speak to everybody. However, those who do discover it will always walk away with a Blancpain on their wrist.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite special.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about my third choice? This is pretty wild.
It's a wild choice. It's a wild choice, but that is a choice that's going to make people look closer and, focus on the wrist.
I wouldn't call this low key, right? Like,
It's not completely low key.
I mean, it's pretty wild.
But it is definitely the definition of if you know, you know.
Yeah,
I would say.
yeah. I mean, it's like my definition of low key here was like people probably wouldn't even pick it,
Yes.
and if they did, I guess like you guys would be really good mates anyway. Like I've got here a Montblanc Minerva movement, and what they've done with this one is they've reversed the movement, skeletonized it, and opened it up for you to enjoy. It's a Monopusher chronograph as well. And low key because, quite frankly, most people don't associate watches with Montblanc. And if you know, you know, because there is a decent amount of hand finishing and traditional technique placed and utilized on
There's
this watch.
so much in that watch, in that movement as well.
It's like an extra large balance wheel, which is really mesmerizing. It's a Monopusher chronograph. So like when you activate it, you use the crown to start it, you use the crown again to stop it and to reset it. And it's not a usual pick. It's not a usual pick. You really have to be deep down the rabbit hole to consider something like this. Yeah.
So what they've kind of done is kind of like, they've kind of put a traditional movement, a very, very kind of traditionally constructed, traditionally operated movement as well with the Monopusher chronograph into a case that is a little bit kind of modern looking. It's got that kind of gunmetal kind of finish on it.
Yeah.
With that kind of weathering as well. And in reversing the movement as well to make it visible on the dial side, that's just one of those ways that they're really trying to bring that watchmaking to the forefront.
So the reason why I would call this "if you know, you know" is because they use a lot of hand finishing on this, and the way to tell whether it's hand finished or not is a topic for another video, right?
Yes.
Most watch lovers wouldn't be able to tell or understand how this is done and how to tell the difference between something that isn't hand finished and something that is. And the biggest giveaway will be in this component here, which is called the devil's tail. And we're going to give a close-up of this devil's tail, just so you can see why it's hand finished. And the reason is, when you look at the edges of all the parts and components, you can see that it's been, there is like what you call like an anglage, a beveling to it. It's not just straight, it's been kind of polished on the side. And to get that kind of angle in, you can only achieve that by hand. And that's why this is kind of like a watch that symbolizes that. And most people wouldn't really understand that.
And in particular, to actually get those really sharp definitions of that devil's tail, that has to be done by hand. You can't do that with a rotary tool or a machine to finish that. This is really something that you have to spend time and effort to get that crisp definition.
It's also if you know, you know, because even if there's somebody who enjoys watches, they'll think that this is not a Monopusher unless they know the product. Unless they know it is. Because there's no dead giveaways. Like for example, this Zenith here is a chronograph, and you can tell it's a chrono just based on the two other pushers. Whereas this one here, you can't really tell. And secondly, the fact that it's from Montblanc, they wouldn't associate Montblanc that much with watches. So Minerva is kind of like their very special division where they get to execute watches of this level.
That's so cool. And even like the way that the balance wheel runs, it's so much like a pocket watch. It's such a slow beating.
Which is good. Is good. It's quite mesmerizing, actually. This is a piece of art.
Yeah.
Like, whoever adds one of these to their collection, they will be happy for many, many years.
Oh, this is something I've got to try on as well.
Yeah, go for it. Have you tried this on?
No, I've never tried this on, actually. I've never tried this on. So,
let's have a look.
Oh, that's so cool.
I've always wanted to add one to my collection. Just because it's so unique.
Yeah. That's so cool.
We've sold Minervas in the past, and usually the type of people who appreciate these watches, they do have quite an extensive collection, and they understand a little bit about the hand finishing, the kind of process behind that. And they can also differentiate in the movement different types of finishes, whether it's perlage, anglage, and they'll also understand the intricacy of how to achieve that.
Yep. There's just so much detail. If you really love the details of watchmaking, this is something that you have to have a look at the very least, because every single piece has had some kind of human intervention on it.
So what I'll finish on with this watch is that straight away it's a skeletonized movement with multiple surfaces and finishes and colors. It's a Monopusher chronograph, which makes it ultra complex as well. And the actual design itself, it's almost like a city. You're looking at a city from the top.
There's so much depth.
Yeah, and you get lost in between the rings, the hands, and also the balance wheel. And so this, for me, is an interesting pick, and it's definitely an if you know, you know type of watch.
May not be low-key, but definitely if you know, you know.
It depends on who's looking at it, right? Like, it depends on who's looking at it. Well, I mean, like, the thing with us at Monards is we kind of see quite a fair bit.
Yeah.
So low-key for me, kind of, it's a little bit more elevated than, say, probably someone else on the street, right? What do you guys think about our 3 choices, respectively? Let us know in the comments. And also, if you got any more interesting questions that you want our opinion on, pop them in the comments below.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.